Hey folks, in this video I'm going to walk you through 4 really practical tips to optimize your Shopify theme. Now, if you followed along my journey with building sections, you'll know that I am obsessed with building the best sections as possible inside of Shopify. So if you're interested in how to get started with sections, check out some of my past videos, but in this video, we're just going to focus on a few tricks that I've picked up over the past 5 years building sections. The first thing we're going to go over is how to preload images inside of a Shopify theme, and this could be really helpful for image banners, so I'll walk you through how you can do that. I'll also walk you through how you can use Javscript tags instead of script tags, and it's not necessarily a performance tip, but it definitely helps you write better code, which I think helps with performance. And then the third tip is I'll walk you through minifying the CSS so that you have cleaner code. And then number 4 will be a bonus tip, so stick to the end of the video. Alrighty, now what we're looking at here is this nice section with this beautiful little zoom in animation here. And I have the section code written out over here on the right hand side of the screen, and I'll walk you through it quickly before showing you my 4 optimization tips for sections. So at the top here, we have a style tag where we have some CSS, some of it's dynamic, some of it's static. Then we have a basic, markup over here with a background image and some text, with a little bit of JavaScript that just essentially gets the section ID and then animates it. And then we have the schema below where we have, a title, description, text color, and all that good stuff. And again, if you're looking at learning how to build your first section, I got another video on that on my channel. This is really just centered around optimization. So first tip here is you'll notice that our background image is loading in a pretty massive image. Now, I could probably make a whole nother video on just how to, improve image loading within Shopify, but I wanted to explain that we can actually preload this image, and Shopify makes that pretty easy for us. What we can do is by this image tag here, preload it by going preload, and we can set that to true. Now what'll happen is on page load, this image will start to load first, and then it'll populate, so we're not waiting for like other elements on the page to load before this image loads in. So that's tip number 1. Pretty simple, and for any hero section that is higher up on the page, I recommend it. For anything lower down on the page, don't do this because you'll be trying to preload something that, should maybe load a little bit later if it is down the page. Now, tip number 2 has to do with JavaScript. Now, you'll notice that I am using these script tags here, which is, fine. Like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with this JavaScript, but Shopify a few years back introduced not using script tags and using these JavaScript tags instead. And what they do is compile the JavaScript within here and then add it into the header, which doesn't necessarily, make the page load faster, but what it does is it makes your sections and blocks a little bit more modular, and it helps you just write better code, which I think helps with performance overall. Now, the one thing to notice is that once you wrap it in the JavaScript tags here, you can't actually reference any liquid inside of this. This needs to change in order to work. So what we need to do is, cursor already has this done for us. We just need to reference it by, or actually cursor is wrong here. We don't necessarily reference it by element ID. We just query select the hero selector. So all we do is select that. So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3 has to do with minifying our CSS. Now, I'll make a whole nother video on how to use Tailwind because in my opinion, it is the best CSS system for writing CSS and just optimizing your code. But if you're just writing CSS the good old standard way, there's a few different tips that we can do here. So for anything dynamic within your style tags, you can leave that within the style tags because you want to make sure that any of your settings or any of your liquid markup can modify the styles. But for anything that's more static, so for anything that's like here down, this can actually be minified here. So what we can do is take all of this, and just for the sake of this video, we could type in like CSS minify, and we can hop in to this top tool here. We can paste this in, minify it, copy this to our clipboard, then we can delete it from here. And then inside of our theme.liquid file, we can create, within the head, some sort of, CSS file. I just named this one base because all of our more static CSS will go in here. But essentially, once you have that created and added into your theme.liquid file, you can paste in your minified CSS, hit save, and go back over into your editor, refresh here. And as we can see here, it is working wonderfully and still is styled nicely. Now, if you want actually even a bonus tip with this, instead of dropping all of your static CSS into one big base.css file, which you see in a lot of themes, you can actually split that apart. And so what you can do is take this tag here and move this over to your section that you're working on. And then right at the top, what you can do is drop it in. Now you can't necessarily preload it. Now on every single page, we don't have the CSS loading in for only this section, and only when this section is on the page does the CSS get loaded in. So instead of calling it base.css, typically a good pattern is to name it the same as what your section is called. So I'll just rename that to hero section.css, hit save, and then within my CSS file, I'm going to rename it to hero section.css. So the last tip, which is a bonus tip, has to do with scoping again, actually. So we can actually scope certain functionality by template suffix or by certain pages. So for example, if we only wanted certain functionality to run on a certain page, instead of it making that functionality run globally on every single page, which could be causing, loading performance issues, sometimes we only want certain JavaScript like this to load on a particular template. Now, obviously for this section, it's fine just because this is relatively lightweight. And if we have this section, we'll want this JavaScript to load for this section. But for other JavaScript functionality, sometimes you just want to scope it to a page template. And what we can actually do is at the bottom of your body, we can add in this little bit of code here, which essentially says if the template name is equal to index, and you could make template name equal to product and all that good stuff, load this JavaScript here. So I'm gonna hit save just so that gets added in. And then I've already added in the JavaScript within this file, but essentially under assets, you just create a new JavaScript file. And then in the theme.liquid, all you have to do is load it in. Now, if we go back to our hero section, we don't want JavaScript in two places. So I'm just gonna delete this here and hit save. And if we just refresh our example over here, you'll notice it is functioning just like normal. And essentially, if we added the section to another page template, the JavaScript functionality wouldn't work because it's only scoped right now to our home page, which is our index page. So yeah, hopefully you found these tips useful. And again, these few little tips could really improve just the way that you are building Shopify themes. Now, obviously they're not necessary, but if you keep building section upon section, eventually you're going to run into issues with performance, and these few little tips could quite honestly really help your page speed and just make your code look nicer, which I'm a nerd, so it's important to me, but I'll leave that up to you. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're interested in Shopify theme development. But yeah, anyways, cheers.